Insurance Debate 2020, brought to you by the Association of Kenya Insurers in partnership with Kenya National Debate Council.
I'm the lead judge and my name is Innocent Alvin. My other panelists are Njeri Karaoke and John Miano. The motion for this round is, this House believes that having a life insurance should be a prerequisite to getting jobs in life-endangering fields like fire service, armed forces, police, health, etc.
Let me first deal with the issue of life insurance. And the first two terms that I want us to look at are term assurance and endowment, because these are the assurances of interest in this particular debate. Term assurance is the policy that offers you protection for a limited period of time. And in the case where you die within that particular period, you are going to be compensated the amount that you have been assured. However, in the case you do not die and happen to survive, then no benefits will tie to you. And the one that is of our interest in this particular debate and shall form the basis of our discussion is endowment, whereby you're paid the full sum if you die, and if you survive and the policy matures, you get the full benefits. That is the particular policy that we want to focus on during this particular debate. Now, as you might all be aware, people in service, in the fire service, in the police force, and in the military are exposed to a lot of danger. Therefore, it becomes necessary to have them being insured so that their families will still have benefits in the case whereby these people, experience casualty, they pass away and things like that. The current status quo is that currently what we have is that we do not have a policy that states that people in these services should have life insurance, and that is a problem. Now, let me give you a case here. There was an Ilade attack some time back, and according to the Business Daily, on the 29th of May 2016, we are aware that right now the government is having to pay for the people in the military who lost their lives. There is also a payment that is going on for people who are missing. I want us to note something here. If you had a life insurance policy taken on behalf of these people, this money would not come from the government, but rather instead would come from the insurance companies who already have a large pot from which to get all this amount. Therefore, this money that the government is currently spending from taxpayers, this money would have gone on to our development and the betterment of our society. Some of it would have been used, for example, in innovation and infrastructure, which is actually SDG number 9. This is what would have happened. Now, what we recommend as government, what we recommend as proposition in our plan, we recommend that these insurance policies be taken by their employers on their behalf, because the employers will have a system that enables that to happen. So employers will take this on their behalf, and this will be useful. What are some of the benefits that will accrue? Because we're focusing on endowment, in the case that the policy matures, the people that are serving in these places will benefit financially, as will their families. In the unfortunate case where any of them loses their lives while they are in service, there will not be a problem of things like education, because money will be available for them to continue to educate their children. Some of the things that have happened, we found that some of these people are the sole breadwinners of their families. So when anything happens to them, we end up with the problem of the families suddenly dive into poverty, yet SDG number 1 is here trying to fight poverty. We also find that when something happens to them, SDG number 4 wants us to have quality education, but the problem occurs where, because quality education cannot be paid for, their children suffer and their dreams are not achieved. So if we ensure that there is a life insurance policy, and specifically the endowment policy, it will ensure that we are able to take care of these families even if the person is not present at that particular moment. Ladies and gentlemen, as a society, we have a structure. And services like the military, police, health, and the like are things we need. The brave men and women who sacrifice themselves in order to ensure that we can have these services should have themselves taken care of, whether they have been in an accident, should have their families taken care of because of the sacrifices that their kin are making. And it is for this particular reason that we believe, as team proposition, that it should be a necessity for the people being employed in these very risky careers to be granted a life insurance policy. It should be part of the law, as this will prove of great benefit to society and will be excessively helpful. And we'll also ensure that they're not afraid to serve because they know their families are taken care of in case anything was to happen to them. And it is with those few remarks that I rest my case.
I invite the first proposer. The stage is yours.
All right, my name is Gadoni Ireri. I will be opposing the motion on the floor. So first, I would like to highlight that the proposition are both bad linguists and bad economists. When they come and they define the motion, they tell us the definition of life insurance, and they highlight for us that there is term insurance and endowments. What the first proposition speaker fails to highlight is the word prerequisite, a very important word in the motion because it highlights that this is a precondition to getting a job. This is what prerequisite means in the English language. So when you come and tell us that your policy will come in and look at the employers taking this insurance policies on the behalf of these people, then what does this mean? These people have not gotten the job. You require them to have this life insurance policy so that they can get the job. So they are not employed, they do not have employers. So on that basis, your case has no merit just from there. Secondly, if you want to talk about endowment policies, you have to consider that these endowment policies are paid out in lump sums. When you have a lump sum, you have to account for inflation, which is something that the proposition team fails to account for. So when you come and tell us that what you're catering for is the education of the children of these people who have been employed in these sectors, then have you accounted for the fact that this money will reduce in value over time, so that it could mean that in 10 years, these children are not catered for in the ways that you have tried to lie to us that they will be catered for in your motion. Secondly, you advance the idea that you care about these professionals, but clearly you do not, because while you note that their lives are of great importance, you place the burden on them to get these life insurance policies as a prerequisite to getting the jobs. As a government, do you understand the unemployment rate in the country before you request people to have a life insurance policy that they will pay for out of what when they are looking for these jobs? House, we are saying that the case that proposition has brought about is a question of a government that is trying to step away from its responsibilities and move this responsibility to employers and businesses which are already trying to take care of their people. So what is our case? Our case first begins with the assertion that the government has a responsibility to its people. These are essential workers, and by the fact that they are essential workers, the government and the country needs them. These are armed forces, these are healthcare workers, these are firefighters. Where is the government going to go when these people don't get jobs? The government should not be trying to pawn off its responsibilities to companies, to firms. The government should take responsibility on its own. So when you come and you tell us that you read in Business Daily, which we notice, yes, you read the papers, do you analyze the papers? When you come and tell us that the government is paying these people for the losses and the deaths that took place when they were in Somalia, then it shows us that you don't care about the armed forces and the military in your country, because yes, it is the government's responsibility to pay for these people because they are taking a risk for this country. This, my friends, is our case that rebuts completely and conclusively the proposition's argument. So what are we trying to say? First of all, the government has a responsibility. That is our first argument. That responsibility cannot be pawned off to firms. It cannot be pawned off to companies. Secondly, what are we arguing? You want to put an endowment policy. Do you cater for the injuries that come up in these fields? Do you cater to post-traumatic stress disorders that come up in these fields? If you don't consider this and the impact that they have on the health of these individuals, and note that these impacts might result in these people not living out their full time in these fields, then this to me seems disingenuous of proposition's case as a whole.
POI?
Yes, please.
You keep saying the government has responsibility. Which responsibility do you speak of?
Perfect. Because these people are essential workers in the country that this government claims to serve, the government has a responsibility to put in place an insurance policy that will cater to them, that will not take this money out of their own pocket. So what we argue for is a radical solution, and this comes in as the third part of my argument. The government should not be trying to put these people into a state where they have to get an endowment plan. If the government really claims to care about its people, it must pay out pension towards these people's beneficiaries after their demise. And this pension should carry forward until their dependents have at least finished university education. A government that really cares for the people and the service that these people render to the nation and its citizenry. This is the bare minimum that the government can do. Not to come here and tell us about taxes that have been spent on people who risk their lives to go out and protect the other citizens of the nations. This is disingenuous of a government that claims to care about its people. So yes, our alternative is that the government should come in, create a fund for these people. If you are an essential service worker, then what you get is that once you get into this employment, then your dependents are catered for depending on the level of your service to this field. For example, if you're a firefighter for 20 years, then it should carry forward that your dependents receive a sum of money until the end of their days. If you die in the service, this is the barest minimum that a government can do for people who are carrying out essential services for the other nations of the country. And with this, we're very proud to oppose this government that's trying to throw its people under the bus. Thank you.
I invite the second proposer to take the stage.
First of all, we are having a problem in terms of definition where the opposition is concerned. That's the problem with the radical opposition. They tend to pick out that which works best for them, forgetting other things that were mentioned on the floor. So why don't we go back and educate them? So by prerequisite, and remembering we as the government are setting the definition of the motion for the day, is we're going to go with the aspect of a prior condition for employment, which we totally agree with what they're saying before they object me on that. Due to risk factors such as fires, bombs, and fire exchange that leads to high levels of casualties in these life-endangering fields. So what exactly do we mean by prerequisite? We agree as a country, a majority of our people do not have employment. But let's take a practical example of when you want to work with any ministry in the government. You have to at least to commit yourself to maybe beginning the process of acquiring your KRA number or such kind of things. So it's not always about the money, but we as a government are putting it in a way that first you have to consent. That is what we mean by the prerequisite, not in terms of monetary aspect, but in kind now, or rather in words. So remove the whole aspect of talking about money. Secondly, they talk about accounting for inflation. We agree, a lump sum may lead to accounting for inflation, but what you're not realizing is it's not everybody who's dying at one time. This is something that happens once in a while. And also, what we have given you is much more beneficial in the government taking its responsibility, because we have taken into consideration if the person dies and if the person does not die. Then, aside from that, they take a radical approach where pension is paid by the government. The current status quo in every country is that every government caters for pension, and this only happens when they take part of your salary, or rather a small percentage of your salary, which will be cumulatively paid later as part of pension. At the end of the day, it still comes out of your pocket. So what are we saying as side proposition? What we are saying as side proposition is we are looking at an aspect of a private-public partnership where we are equipping the best players to take care of our people at the end of the day. And that means we genuinely care about these people. We agree we are at fault at some point, and what we are finding is a solution in the way forward. So if we take your radical approach and say that pension will be fully paid by the government, where is that money supposed to come from when we're already falling short of our own responsibilities? So a private-public partnership where these insurers are taking catering for these needs is equipping the best players to take care of the people at the front line and ensure that at the same time the government has taken care of the pensions that will always be paid whether or not you die. That being said, we close the case of the opposition.
Yeah.
Yes, Gadoni.
Are you saying that your government can afford to lose all the money it's losing to corruption, but cannot afford to set aside funds to cater for the dependents of essential workers who are risking their lives for the citizens of this country?
That is totally outside the scope of this discussion, because the leader of opposition is simply assuming that this country is prone to corruption. Has it been proven at any point of the debate? Not at all. So that in itself is totally null and void. Rather, what we had said is money is being channeled to development of things such as infrastructure, as the proposition had already mentioned before. So we're looking at the how factor. How does the world look like We gave you a case example of the USA, and we're saying that how is it done? That partnership between the government and the private sector to ensure that at the end of the day, in case anything happens to you, there's money paid in lump sums or in installments. We gave you an option. While you bring in the consideration of inflation, you need to also take into consideration that we've given you the option of both a lump sum option and payment in installments, which will be a period of 3 years and divided over 36 months. It is working in every frontline ministry, not only in countries in the first world, but also in the third world countries. And finally, we have shown you the benefits of a world with a prerequisite in terms of life employment. And what are the benefits? One, remember, when you look at the statistics show that a majority of the spouses of people in the front line are not employed. So we are making sure that at the end of the day, their needs are catered for as well as their children. Leave alone education, well-being of the families is very important. And then finally, we have shown you that we as the government have taken it into consideration to understand that our people at the front line might be involved in so much more than caring for their own needs, and we care for these needs. That's why we set up the policies. Thank you.
And finally, I welcome the second opposer to take the stage.
I'll begin by rebutting the case brought forward by the proposition. First of all, it's too late for the proposition to change the definition because they set the parameters based on the first definition. At the same time, at the end of the day, when you tell us that money is not, like we need to rule out that aspect, I need you to understand that you have to pay for life insurance at the end of the day, whether you are employed or not. To get life insurance, you need to pay for it. Now, I want to move to this particular case that the previous speaker brought in about people do not die at the same time, so it's trying to rebut our case for inflation. Yet, they still come back and use the example of a bomb. A bomb kills a large number of people. When you're paying for all that, does it not bring about inflation cases? I bet it does. Well, I want to move into the next case where they come and say, at the end of the day, this particular insurance companies and the government take up a small percentage of your salary. Well, they'd rather take that which you are assured you have than that which that you do not. Well, at the same time, you come and give us the case example of USA, trying to look at what the world looks like. I hope you're aware that the world is made of Africa, other third world countries, and all middle class countries at the same time. Everybody in these particular countries are trying to meet all those needs. Now, the problem with African countries and third world countries, not only African countries, but all third world countries, is that there's the issue of poverty, high rates of unemployment, and these people are also trying to get into employment. So that simply means that they do not even have money to pay for that particular life insurance that you're trying to call a prerequisite. Now, I'll proceed to the cases of the opposition. I'll take your cases once I'm done. Well, to begin with prerequisites, it means a precondition. It means the same way you say you have to be 18 to 35 years when you get this job, you have to have a life insurance to get this job. Does that really work? Where, first of all, I believe that most people who are applying for jobs do not even have money in the first place. And that's why they're even going to look for that particular job so that they can be able to enjoy certain benefits in life. For example, life insurance. Well, we'll proceed and give certain alternatives that we're giving to this particular motion. One, a group insurance once they have already gotten the job. Once they have already gotten the job, of which here, it caters for life insurance. At the same time, you'll come and say, oh, you know, maybe insurance is really expensive and that's why many people cannot cater for it. A group insurance puts you at the same rank with your colleagues and allows you people to pay the same amount of money for that particular insurance and still enjoy the same benefits at the end of this particular insurance. Two, personal accident covers as an alternative to life insurance. Let me tell you this. Working with essential services goes two ways. It's an injury or death. Does life insurance cater for injuries only? Or does it wait for you to die so that it can cater for your family? What happens within those particular periods of time before you die? Who caters for your hospital services? Is it the same life insurance? Is it? Well, tell me that. So here we're looking at it in two ways. Once you have a personal accident cover, once you get burnt in a fire and you get into hospital, your hospital bills are catered for based on your hospital covers. At the same time, when we look at shootings and all that, sometimes you can get shot in your hand. What happens? You still get catered for by that particular personal accident cover. If you survive, Yes, you came with the case of the payment, whether you survive or you die. But this is the case. A personal accident cover is a better solution to this. At the same time, I'll proceed and talk about infrastructural and inadequate equipment that are in these essential services that pose greater risk to these particular people. The government should think about providing decent jobs by strengthening infrastructure for these particular people. Now, I'll tell you how. First of all, when it comes to armed forces and police, my friend, you can get gears that protect them. When we go to health particular services, you can get the same gears. At the end of the day, it's about strengthening infrastructure in such a way that you reduce risk. Then, once the people are in the job, think about life insurance policies that cater for each and every one of them. When you come and talk to us about SDGs, let me tell you what our solutions do. They eliminate poverty, they provide good jobs and economic growth, particularly decent jobs. 3, they reduce inequalities all over the world because it's going to be a universal policy. Thank you.
So this round of debate was robustly engaging. The panelists were impressed and they used the following parameters to gauge the quality of the teams that were in it. The first parameter was engagement, burdens fulfilled, and the manner of presentation. So the main issues that came about from the debate were basically the motion. There was a contention between the definition of prerequisite, whereby the government initially defined prerequisite as a prior arrangement, but later then shifted to mean consent. And the opposition was keen enough and highlighted that fault, and therefore the judges took note of this as a discredit on side proposition. Secondly, the other issue that came strongly in the debate was whose responsibility it was to ensure the citizens, especially those looking for jobs. Whereas the government was advocating for insurance to be done by the citizens themselves, the opposition claimed that the citizens were jobless and therefore did not have money to insure themselves before they could actually look for the jobs. And the panelists thought that side opposition was more logical because they ended up and qualified the argument that these people will still get jobs and therefore be in a position to attain life insurances for themselves and their family. The third issue, which was also an issue of contention, was how feasible is this insurance? Whereas side government claimed that it's very feasible first to get insurance before getting the jobs. Side opposition challenged it that at the moment, the economy is doing so poorly and the government has all it takes to secure insurance for its citizen as a responsibility bestowed upon it. And therefore, it was the responsibility of the government to upcheck insurance for its citizens and not the citizens themselves. So it is for those reasons that the panelists considered that side opposition had more logical arguments and therefore ended up carrying the day.
Insurance Debate 2020, brought to you by the Association of Kenya Insurers in partnership with Kenya National Debate Council.